And I don't know how many people in South Korea thought the same way, but when they brought back the military parades, and especially seeing him and his defense minister on the back of this jeep, parading around. I mean, he looked like an Arab dictator. He looked like Colonel Gaddafi. I was listening to something on my phone as I was falling asleep, and suddenly my phone cut out. And the editor just said, the president's declared martial law in South Korea. Do you mean North Korea? He said, no, South Korea. As what are you talking about? It's easy to paint him as a cartoon villain, but actually, when he was a student, he participated in a mock trial against Chun Doo-hwan, and in this mock trial, Yoon, as a student, called for the death penalty for Chun Doo-hwan. Mm-hmm. Middlemen, even catch and arrest criminals. But the brute fact is that sanctions haven't worked, diplomacy is going nowhere, and North Korea responds very badly to... On holiday, my phone was on silent, and it was about 10:30, I guess, and
I just want to know about you. Like, are you from UK, or you just mentioned that your parents are from Poland, so...
So my father is British,
mm-hmm.
my mother is Polish.
Mm-hmm.
They met in France.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in the United States, and I was raised in the UK.
All right. So you have a citizenship in US and UK, or?
And Poland, yeah.
In Poland.
Yeah.
So you have 3 different citizenships.
Yeah, and Poland is a member of the European Union, so
right,
technically
true.
4, because I have an EU passport.
Oh my God.
But of course, I also have my Korean residency card, which is technically a fifth identity document. So
all right.
at the moment, Korea is my home above all other countries. And actually, when I'm out of Korea, I feel homesick for Korea more than I feel
really?
homesick for
you
England.
You have a kimchi sick and ramen sick, those kind of thing.
Exactly. Although Korean Air doesn't serve kimchi, which is interesting.
So you're currently reporting for Financial Times. Most of our viewers already know what's FT, Financial Times, but would you please explain to us what kind of philosophy or what kind of editorial value that you guys have?
We're basically a global business newspaper. Our headquarters is in London, but we're really a newspaper with a presence all across the world. Mm-hmm. I'm the bureau chief.
Yes.
So I really cover everything, not just South Korea, but North Korea as well.
Yeah.
And as you say, we write about corporate things, technology, business, the markets, but also politics and Korean foreign affairs,
right.
Relations with other countries and the regional issues.
Sometimes BTS too, right?
Very rarely,
entertainment,
but it has happened. It has happened.
Yeah. Okay, so is it okay if we talk about martial law right
You can
now?
ask me whatever you like.
Okay.
Whatever you like.
So December 3rd last year, it was big event, the martial law declaration. Where were you at the time, and then what were you doing? That was kind of curiosity that I have.
Yeah, I was in bed actually.
Oh, you were in bed.
I had just got back from holiday the day before, and I'd have my phone on through the night in case something happens.
Right.
But because I'd just been on holiday, my phone was on silent, and it was about 10:30, I guess, and I was listening to something on my phone as I was falling asleep, and suddenly my phone cut out. So I looked at my phone, and it was my editor calling from London.
Oh.
And sometimes the editors in London, they forget or they miscalculate the time zone difference, and they call you at the wrong time.
Right,
so
right.
I was ready to say, look, leave me alone. It's, I'm going to sleep.
Yes, leave me alone.
And the editor just said, the president's declared martial law in South Korea. And I remember saying, do you mean North Korea? And,
Kim Jong-un.
and he said, no, South Korea. I said, what are you talking about? So, of course, so I got up, and that was a long night. I mean, I ended up working until 8 a.m. that morning, and then 2 hours sleep, and then a full day the following day, and really it didn't stop for a week or two. And actually, my colleague, my predecessor, who was in Seoul before, he's now in Shanghai.
I know that guy.
My editor's flew him straight over back to Seoul to expand our team.
All right.
You know, this sometimes happens with journalists. On the one hand, bad things happen or distressing or worrying or troubling things happen. On the other hand, as a journalist, you're extremely excited. And, you know, it got us on the front page of the Financial Times for the first time since I joined the newspaper. So in some sense, I should be grateful to President Yoon for doing that. But of course, that's a slightly selfish perspective that journalists always have.
You're the journalist. I totally agree with you. But the martial law ended pretty quickly. Did you expect it that end so fast like that? It ended in a couple hours.
Yes and no. You know, I actually spoke to a very senior former Korean army officer that night. And we were discussing what kind of martial law is this? Because the martial law has been declared, but what kind of martial law is this? Because I don't see any tanks on the street. I don't see... My internet is still working. My phone is still working. So this is either not a real martial law or a totally incompetent martial law or something symbolic. And then, of course, it became very clear with all the events in the National Assembly that it was something in between.
Right. Did you see people running into street and then some women, they were holding hands, block the soldiers. They were like just running into truck and then block them. Did you see that kind of
So we saw all the footage and so on. And of course, in the moment, it's all very chaotic and it's hard to make sense of what's going on. And of course, what was very clear, became very clear, was that South Korean society, especially some of the older generations, have some muscle memory of responding to a crisis like this. And so you very quickly saw that people who were young or who were students during the 1980s and the late 1980s, they almost instinctively knew what to do. And so you got this amazing rush to the National Assembly, and these sort of ajashis who had been out having food, dinner and alcohol, they suddenly go into the National Assembly and they had their earpieces with the, with the live news, and they had some instinctive, deep down recollection about how to respond to the use of force by the state. And of course, on one level, this was very inspiring to see, quite moving to see. But of course, on another level, they shouldn't have had to do it in the first place. So I think there's always been people, both in Korea and outside of Korea, people who have been cheerleading South Korean democracy, giving a slightly exaggerated picture of how it's so wonderful, so rosy, because of course the country did achieve so much and it came so far so quickly. But a lot of the flaws, a lot of the problems have been overlooked for a long time. And so you saw in this moment when there was this sort of spontaneous citizens' reaction to the martial law to say, oh, well, look, this shows how resilient, how strong, how great South Korean civic society is. And although there is a lot of truth in that, we cannot allow that to distract us from how this situation was allowed to arise in the first place. Because, these ajashis, they should have been allowed just to enjoy their dinner. They shouldn't have had to run to the National Assembly.
Did you ever expect Yoon Sung-yeol might declare martial law? Did you notice anything strange about him while you were covering news?
The answer is no, of course not. I mean, I would be lying if I said that I was expecting something like exactly like martial law to happen. But I do think that sometimes language and behavior, especially in a leader, matters. So, for example, using the language like about anti-state forces, this is very authoritarian language, which the president was using for quite a few years. And a lot of people would say, oh, it's just rhetoric. But no, language really matters, especially with leaders. And so, there were some worrying signs about the authoritarian tendency in the way that he would speak. And the other thing that made me really think, and I don't know how many people in South Korea thought the same way, but when they brought back the military parades, and especially seeing him and his defense minister on the back of this jeep, you know, parading around.
Right.
I mean, he looked like an Arab dictator. He looked like Colonel Gaddafi or something like that. You know, this self-important martial style for a civilian leader is something that someone from a democratic country would instinctively feel uneasy about. And it had this sense of, you know, okay, North Korea has their military parades. South Korea doesn't have to behave more like North Korea in order to intimidate them.
Right.
The intimidating thing for North Korea is actually to say, you know what, you can parade as many ICBMs and as many military parades as you like. We don't need to do that. First of all, we're stronger than you. And secondly, we are freer people than you. So we don't need to behave like you in this macho way. But it was this sort of trying to mirror North Korean machismo with that military parade. Of course, it didn't make me think that martial law would happen, but it did give me an uneasy feeling, I think.
Uneasy feeling. During the constitutional court trial, part of the martial law plans were revealed. What did you think when you heard about Yoon's testimony?
I think it's easy to paint him as a cartoon villain. And maybe he is. I'm not saying he's not necessarily. But the really interesting thing, and I think this is actually something that maybe the Korean media, but certainly the foreign media haven't yet got to grips with, was why he did this. And not just why he did it on that day or in this moment, but actually I think the longer-term trajectory of Yoon's life is really fascinating. We would call it a Shakespearean story, and kind of a tragic story, not in the sense that you should feel sorry for him, but you know, there's this fascinating anecdote that when he was a student, he participated in a mock trial against Chun Doo-hwan, and in this mock trial, Yoon, as a student, called for the death penalty for Chun Doo-hwan. And 40 years later, Yoon ends up as the next president to declare martial law, and is on trial, and obviously the criminal trial is still going on. You know, as an outside observer, I would say, you know, there are people who want to condemn Yoon Suk-yeol, and there are people who want to defend him.
Right.
I think at some point Korean society needs to really look at his example and think, how did it happen?
How did it happen?
Well, I'm saying, if Yoon is such a bad choice, why did Lee Jae-myung lose to him? So what I say to my conservative friends is, whatever your problems with Lee Jae-myung, whatever your problems or whatever, just concentrate on your own side and give a candidate that could do a full term.
If you have a right to vote here, who would you vote?
My instinct is... So probably